I'm the host of Ohneganos Let's Talk Water. My name's Makasa Licking Horse, and I'm Mohawk Wolf from Six Nations. I'm also Lakota from South Dakota, and I am your host. Um, so we're gonna start off by saying I know that last week we had a lot of technical issues, and that we had a lot of technical issues, mainly regarding Facebook Live, and our Facebook Live through many portals would not work, and that has happened. We have been flagged before on our Facebook page for having, I think, because we are like more of an activist, indigenous activist page, so our Facebook is being watched and is being very and is being like monitored very heavily by Facebook, and they're monitoring what we post and stuff. So that's why we had a lot of issues last week, and so now this week we're going through Facebook, or not Facebook. We're going through YouTube, and so it's going to be a little bit smoother for here on out. And I'm happy that we can finally use all of our tech stuff properly, and we want to give a big shout out and thank you to Alex and Summer again for helping us, because this is a huge new production from when we first started our season 1, and now we're into a new setup for season 2 that takes a whole production. Yeah, and so for this episode we're going to be talking about women in water, and I hope that everybody enjoys it. So, and our first talk is with Bev and Mary, and Mary Sandy is going to be our first guest. And Mary Sandy is concerned community member about Six Nations water issues here at Six Nations, and she also sits in our Global Water Futures Grandmothers Committee. Mary has also worked really hard in the fight against Nestle and helped with the cease and desist letter. And so, yeah, we can switch to Mary. Do you want to tell a little, if Mary can hear me, do you want to tell us a little bit about what your insights on Nestle are, and what have you learned? Oh, I don't think Mary's on right now. So, um, so yeah, we have like I said, how we had a grandmother's committee. We had, through the water project, and my advocacy work, going to our traditional council a lot. We formed a grandmother's committee that the grandmothers have decisions over what we do, and so I had to have all of their blessings first before I could even move forward with pursuing Nestle and getting them shut down. And I told them what they were doing. They were taking 3.6 million liters of water out of our aquifer, and nobody knew about that at first. And so that's how the water and the grandmothers committee first started. And after we did that, we got a cease and desist letter, and Beverly Jacobs helped us with that a lot. And our next guest would be Beverly Jacobs, and she's the one who helped write this actual cease and desist letter that I'm reading in that picture right there, standing with the two clan mothers, Mary and Norma. So, Bev, do you wanna... So Dr. Beverly Jacobs is an associate dean at the University of Windsor Faculty of Law. She wrote at the cease and desist letter against Nestle, and has done a lot of work there. So, Bev, are you there? Can you hear me? You can take your speaker off mute. How did you get involved with advocacy work?
Hi. Um, hmm. So for me, advocacy work has been just, I guess, life's work. Um, I started um, probably when it woke me up to do advocacy work was during law school. So in I started law school in 1991 and finished in 1994. And it was then that I realized, um, being raised in a community and being raised, in the longhouse and understanding our laws and ceremonies. Um, it was when I went to law school and I realized how much colonial law was used as a tool to try to erase our people. And I started to see how much I was taught and how much um, in learning about colonial law and Eurocentric law,
Yeah.
the tools that they use to erase all of our knowledge. So that's when I became an advocate.
Yeah, I think we definitely become an advocate even when we participate in the colonial school system soon as because most of everything that they teach doesn't have any of our history in it, right? So we as individual or youth or students naturally have to become have that responsibility of being an advocate for um, I guess our indigenous responsibilities, um,
Right.
responsibilities to the land and to the water and just on all issues because we're not included a lot inside any kind of history books or in history class or science class or anything like that because we have all of our own knowledge and none of it is taught in our mainstream Western school, I guess. School, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, and
Curriculum?
when you learn in law, because law is like a second degree after an undergraduate degree.
Mm-hmm.
So in law is like a professional degree. And when you have, lawyers, potential lawyers in law school who are learning about, um, property law, constitutional law,
Yeah,
contract
it's
law.
all different. Like
Right.
everything that you're saying is
Yeah,
different for indigenous people. It's like we're living in a whole
right.
different
It was really,
world.
yeah,
Go
it is
ahead.
a whole different world. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is a whole different world, a whole different way of thinking. And when you're raised a certain way about who we are as a people, we're raised with the the our strong teachings about sovereignty and self-determination, and that's how I was taught, or how I was raised.
Mhm.
And then coming into colonial space, and all of a sudden they're telling you that you don't exist, that you're the tools like property law for existence um, uh, that we were overtaken by conquest.
Mhm.
Those kinds of, and even in constitutional law with the British North America Act, all of a sudden we became wards of the crown under, Section 9124 of the BNA Act, and it's like, what?
Mhm.
That's not how I was taught. All of a sudden now they control who we are as a people.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it was a big.
within that like western paradigm, do you have to rewrite and argue every paper that you had to hand in? And how
Yeah.
was that like for you?
It was hard because while in law school, right, you have to regurgitate the law.
Mhm.
So it's all mental work. So you learn case law, you learn case law after case law after case law, and it has nothing to do with Indigenous people. It doesn't
Mhm.
have anything to do with us at all. So um, so that's in first year law school, right? You're learning the basics,
Mhm.
property law, like I said, constitutional. Um, so it's not even until you get to the upper years of law school where you get to form an opinion
Mhm.
to say, you know what, this course and this doesn't apply to me,
Yeah.
and these are the reasons why. So
Mhm.
it's a constant struggle to have to do that as an Indigenous person, as an Indigenous traditional person,
Mhm.
um, in having learned that. So that was 3 years that I had to do that and to actually probably um, fight it all the way through, but still learning it at the same time. So
Yeah.
there was an elder, a Mi'kmaq elder that called that two-eyed seeing because you have to learn their law,
Mhm.
you have to learn their way of being and maintain your own. So that's a difficult process to do
Yeah.
as an Indigenous person.
Yeah, and I think that all Indigenous like students have to do that, whether it's in the science field or humanities or any kind of anything that we have to first learn it through and through so that we can form our like precise argument and then learn ours through and through, make sure we have all of our arguments right, and then combine it like together and like make sure that we have a solid like argument, and like it's so difficult that we have to do that in the first place, and we really shouldn't have to at all, um, because we're
No,
first ones in Canada. So I think that our values and our should be treasured and should be um, valued and should be learned. And definitely it's definitely really different. And do you want to share with us a win that you had recently or not recently,
uh,
whatever you want?
win. Hmm. I guess. Hmm. And thinking, I guess, in as an advocate. So maybe a win as an advocate um, in doing the work for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Um, starting almost 20 years ago now, working with the families, um, working with Amnesty International. Um, at that time, there was no public attention.
Mhm.
Um, the attention that there should have been in the the non-indigenous world. I think it was very well aware in our world as indigenous peoples of the work that we were families were doing on their own.
Mhm.
Um, whether it was the searches or whether it was the having to put up their own poster boards, their own notices in
Mhm.
different places. And so that's what I guess maybe in that work through Amnesty and um, the international work through my advocacy at the UN and other international forums while I was president of the Native Women's Association of Canada and in Canada to bring that attention
Mhm.
with the many. I mean, it wasn't just me, it was the support of so many
Yeah.
to bring that attention internationally.
So what you're saying is
And
you were one of the first people to spearhead the indigenous the to for Canada to recognize the murder and missing indigenous women's issue. And yeah,
yeah,
that's
like as from the as leadership, I guess, in the different spaces that I have been in, to be able to bring that attention in the different places that I was able to bring it, um, and really um, highlighting the lack of attention that Canada was doing, not only the lack of attention but the silencing,
mhm.
um, and the silencing of Indigenous women. And I mean, it's still not 100%. It's still not what it should be.
Mhm.
But now, um, after watching what happened with the national inquiry, even when it was announced,
Mhm.
just as an example, when I started, um, and being in Ottawa, right, there's the parliamentary media
Mhm.
on Parliament Hill. So standing in front of um, one camera, which was the internal parliamentary camera.
Yeah.
In probably 2003 and four, there was one camera. And then going to the opening of the national inquiry, and there were, hundreds of
Yeah.
media outlets, cameras, and, that kind of attention
Mhm.
was finally there.
Yeah.
And um, finally the public started to become aware of the issues, and how horrific it is, and how the families have had to endure all of that trauma,
Mhm.
and no response, finally getting a response
Yeah. I
through that. So I guess I would call that a win, maybe.
Yeah, that's
um
definitely a
and
win. That's not a win just for yourself. That's a win for so many families that have um, lost loved ones, and so many voices that were silenced. And I think that that's definitely not just a win for you, but for all of those families that probably have finally felt heard by Canada. And I know that they probably felt like they weren't heard by Canada or by Ontario, or however, um, or by like even the United States, or they have just haven't felt like they have any voice. And I think you definitely brought a lot of attention, and not only spoke for yourself but and for your community, and but for all of the murdered and missing Indigenous women. Um, so I think that would thank you for sharing that, and I think that would definitely lead into you have a presentation for us.
yeah, so what I wanted to do was, part of the work, um, with the Ohneganos team. Part of my role is to highlight, um, Haudenosaunee women, or women as leaders in water governance.
Mhm.
And so what I wanted to do was to, um, just to highlight some of our own laws,
Mhm.
Haudenosaunee laws. So when I did my master's in law, I did it on the Great Law of Peace. And I remember asking the question to our knowledge holders at that time whether there was a word for law,
Mhm.
um, in our language. And and the response that I got at that time was that there isn't a word like specifically to say law,
They just have
but
a word for
our
women,
way,
and they're the law.
there's a word, but there was a word for like our way of being. This
Mhm.
is this is who we are, and that's Gwenhwenhia. in the Cayuga language. So I was raised with the Cayuga language. My dad spoke Cayuga,
Mhm.
and so most of my discussion at that time was in the Cayuga language, and and the different words. So that's what I had said. Well, our laws are our way of being,
Mhm.
and so following that, um, and working on my PhD, then I said, okay, then how is our way of being? How does that create healthiness? How is that holistically healthy? Um, so I thought the best way to um, highlight the work that I've done is through visuals,
Mhm.
because a lot of our language is visual,
Yeah.
and so about even the sources of our law. So it's the sources of Haudenosaunee law. So what does that mean? What does that mean to us, right? It says, okay, well, this is our laws, this is our culture, this is our way of being, this is what your mom, what Dawn calls indigenous knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge.
Mhm.
It's all one in this. We talk about our way of being. So one of the sources of our law is the creation story, right? And when you think about the creation story, and this is a visual, right? I always say art too is a source of our law. So our artists have that skill to be able to present our law. So this is my uncle Arnold's art and the visual of the creation story, right? And the sky woman falling from the sky world onto the turtle's back, and so thinking about how she envisioned um, the world as she was falling, right? And also starts with water, and
Mhm.
she's pregnant. So in thinking about uh, her relationship to not only her own body and the baby that she's carrying in water, but also the relationship to where she's falling. And that was the animal world and the bird world that helped her to land on the turtle's back. And so there was a whole relationship to um, all of creation in order for her to survive.
Mhm.
Um, and so where I see um, the source of our laws comes right from the creation story, and also that our laws are very feminine.
Mhm.
That when we start thinking about not only the creation story and Sky Woman, and the story of Sky Woman and her relationship, and also being grandmother moon in our creation story, and how that whole story, um but also the birthing, right, and the birthing of our children, and the women being responsible to carry our babies.
Yeah, so the
um
water
that's
stories is all, and just in that picture you can see how we're connected to water in many different ways from when the water was from when the world was all water, and from the water inside her stomach. And you can, just from that picture, you can understand and grasp that idea and that concept that we have as Haudenosaunee people. I think, yeah, art is definitely a great way to convey that, or even like teach that to people who don't know that much.
right. Yeah.
Um,
So if we can move to the next.
can you see the
So
shells? Yeah.
this is the wampum. Yeah. So this is another, what I call another source of our law. So a source of our law has been our wampum belts.
Yeah.
And the wampum comes right from the shell that's in the water. So it's all connected back to the water again,
Mhm.
and how the shells were created, but then how our people use those shells to create spiritual um, spiritual knowledge, right? It's our tools, and I would even call them artists as well because of how they were able to create our wampum belts and the different uh, ways of remembering, right? I think that's how we've been able to remember our laws is because of the use of our wampum belts and
Mhm.
the development of them. And so when you think about all of the knowledge, not only in creating those little beads from the shell, but how they've been, because we have hundreds of them, right? We have
Mhm.
hundreds of wampum belts that were created to remember our laws. And so that's, I also connect that to the water and how strong that relationship is right from the development of the wampum.
Mhm.
So if
And
we move to the next, go ahead.
do you want to explain a little bit about um what wampum belts are? Since I think some of our
Yeah.
viewers might not know what belts are.
Okay. Yeah. So um, if we move to the next slide, so these were the wampum that was created. Um, First, there was wampum that was created to recognize our leadership. So these were the kinds of um, strings that were given from the peacemaker to our leadership, to our clan mothers, and to the male leadership. And so it was used right from that time. We move to the next one, the next slide, the next one. So this is what's called the women's nomination belt. And this was one of the wampum belts that was created to recognize the leadership of our clan mothers and of the women within our nations. And so you can see how the belt was created from all those little beads from the wampum shell. So they were put together and formed like a belt. And but it was more of a like a mat or more of a, because they weren't used as a belt, right? Like you think of a belt is you keep your hold your pants up, but it wasn't used as a, it wasn't used like that. I guess the way that the language is interpreted, but it was more of something that you use to remember our laws. So this is an example. This is a women's nomination belt, and it was, one of the first belts that were created to remember the role of our clan mothers and the role of the women, um, and the relationship that we have. So this is the recognition of the governance of our women, and the decision making of our clan mothers, not only to choose the male leadership, but also as leaders of our houses, of our longhouses, of our matrilineal identity, and that our identity is through our mothers. Um, and so that's, also you can see on the wampum belt the um, images um, of women. That's what that was intended to be. But also you can see in the center, it looks like one of our longhouses, but that's what that represents. And I was also told that the center also represents our mother, the earth, and that our responsibilities are like our mother, the earth, and all of the responsibilities that we have as mothers. And that's why the peacemaker came to our territories, because that's what was creator's laws. and that creator had said, this is going to be the roles, this is the role of women and the strength of women in our nationhood, not only to bring life and carry life, but also the decision makers. But also, there was a responsibility of all of us as women to be unified. So that's the solid line that goes all the way through the belt. And so that too is all of our responsibility as women, because we have knowledge as women, and to be unified in the decision making that we have, and we do because of our relationships to our children, right, and
Yeah.
to even to our grandmothers, right, and so that lineal descent comes down in understanding our relationship, and so our ceremonies acknowledge that as well, right, whether it's naming ceremonies, birthing ceremonies. And so when I say that that we have those connections through um, the feminine, through maternal. And when I was doing my PhD research, I interviewed the clan mothers. I interviewed Louise McDonald. I interviewed Gudgy Cook. I interviewed those women who have that knowledge, and that was also part of the their acknowledgement, and the role, and what Louise McDonald has called mother law, right?
Yeah.
And that's our responsibilities as women. So that's the um,
We
root
had
of
we had Louise McDonald talk
of
about um, women's law in our previous weeks, and she was on with Tina, and she just was a surprise guest, and she shared some of those teachings on women's law. Yeah, and I think didn't didn't the Canada and the U.S. Um, design their government and get their structure of what is it called when everybody like puts their minds together or like comes to a conclusion? But didn't they get
to consent, yeah,
consensus
one
or like
our
yeah
mind.
yeah didn't they design their government system after the Haudenosaunee's government system?
They did.
But they forgot
They did. They
about
designed it.
women. And that's why it's not running
Thought
so
about the
well.
women. That's right. That's why every government done well.
Yeah, exactly. Because they definitely forgot
Yeah.
about women, and you're definitely right in that I think we are set up that way so that because we think about, like you're saying, the future and of our children, and that's like a
Yeah.
huge quality that I think that it just comes natural to women, and that we're always multitasking and we're always looking ahead and thinking about our future. And I think that's why there's a lot of women just doing environmental work. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're all making these things happen. And in environmental work, or because really it's all really connected, whether it's um, whether it's land or water or any kind of, or even murdered and missing Indigenous women, like that's definitely connected to our um, our ecological state, I guess. And maybe
Mhm.
can you expand a little bit on? I think you know what I'm talking about. Expand a little bit on that, on your thoughts
About our
about our how it's
on the
connected.
response.
Yeah, how is murdered and missing Indigenous women connected to um, our ecological state?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
So let me let me go back, just go back to the next slide, because I'm getting to the relationships that we have as you know, with the colonizers, with
Mm-hmm.
Canada, with their system, right? So we have the Gaswanta, so the relationship that we have with the early colonizers, and our ancestors created this another wampum belt, the two-row wampum belt, and the nation to nation relationships between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and with the early colonizers, including the Dutch and the French and the British, um, and with the United States. So just go to the next slide again.
You have to go to the next slide.
So this is from my my dissertation, and think and looking at the wampum belt itself, and so we have the colonial laws in their ship on one side, and our laws in our canoe on the other. And our laws have always been about responsibilities, right? So we're all responsible. Every time I talk to a knowledge holder, to an elder, to people who have that kind of knowledge about our way of being, always said it's our responsibilities to the natural world. It's our responsibilities to our mother, the earth, to the water, to the land, to the medicines, right? Everything that's in the Thanksgiving address. That's what we are responsible as human beings. But then when we look at the colonial system, right, all of a sudden they start talking about rights, and it's based on individual rights. I have a right to this. I have a right to that. I have a hunting right. I have a fishing right. I have, those rights weren't created by us.
Mm-hmm.
The rights, the rights discourse came from colonial laws. And so when you think about how that's supposed to work together, it's like, well, if I have a right to fishing, then I need to be responsible to the fish. That's according to our law, to Haudenosaunee law. If I have if I have a right to healthy water, then I need to be responsible to that right, and I need to be responsible to the water. So that's where our governance systems come into place. It's like, if I'm going to dump crap into the water, then that's against our law. And so if that is part of the governing responsibilities that we have, then what are the enforcement mechanisms? Well, it's according to Haudenosaunee law, every one of us is responsible, and Creator takes care of that. So somehow Creator is going to take care of the water. They're going to take care of the people who are hurting the water. So we have to really think about it on a different kind of level of understanding. And so also um, from colonial law, right? They've given rights to corporate Canada, to corporations, where they're actually allowed to um, pollute, right? According to environmental legislation. So they have a right um, to do these different things, even under environmental policies and legislation. So go to the next slide, and this is where the connection uh, of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls comes into place. Um, I'm not sure if you can put that on the full screen or not, because um, it's a powerful visual um, of while I was doing my research in Akwesasne. um, I met with, like I said, with Gudgie Cook, and one of her strong, powerful statements was that um, women are the first environment, and that of course comes from the creation story, like I started out, and so if we're the first environment, um, we're now having to deal with the traumas not only of pollution and the impacts to the water, but it's also women who have been targeted. So this is a really powerful piece by the late Brad Bonaparte, and Gudgy Cook reminded me that he had done this piece, and I had to look for it. And it was on the cover of an organization called the
Okay,
International
got
Justice.
it. But I don't know how to.
And so it was a like I said, it's a powerful piece because in talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, a lot of our women have been thrown, their body parts, their bodies thrown into rivers and oceans and lakes and in the ground, in the back into the earth. And so this is the traumas that our women and the women who carry our babies are having to having to go through. Um, so this is like the waters that have been polluted, and you can see on the top of the visual is all of the resource development, all of the corporations that have polluted our waters, and polluted our women and polluted um, our babies, the babies who are supposed to be protected by water. And also in the work in interviewing Gudgy Cook, she did a study of women's breast milk that were actually was mercury poisoning, and they were feeding their babies that breast milk. So that's the direct connection between the violence that's occurring to our waters and the violence that's occurring to our women, and the numbers and of missing and murdered. So it is a horrific, um, it is horrific. That's all I can say. It's traumatizing, um, and um, how we're having to learn how to survive um, from that violence. So I see Norma's on the line.
Hi, Norma. Thank you for sharing that, Bev. I think I just thank you for your work, and um, that's definitely how it's interconnected. And knowing that we even have that heavy metal here in Six Nations is um, definitely
Mm.
um, it's very similar from up there. And what did you say? The Arctic? From yeah.
And Akwesasne.
Oh, I thought you said the Arctic with breast milk. Yeah, from Akwesasne. And we have very similar. We have about 5 heavy metals here in our Six Nations um, tap, and that is from their cisterns and wells. And we couldn't find a direct trace from why it's happening and where it's coming from. And there's lots of suspicions on where and why, but we don't have enough data, and it's very spotty from different ends of the reserve, so it's very hard to tell where that's coming from. But that's why we're working with the birthing center, and we have um, talked to, I forget her name. I forget the head director there, but we are working with them because there's a lot of women who have gotten a lot of infections because of our water quality, and I think that's very similar in how it's connected. and even there's a lot of stories about like women who have had problems because they had to carry in water from their from outside into their houses, and just being and just getting water to their houses to feed their family, to put water in the tub or put water on the stove for any kind of food. And um, we're doing a study there so that we can gather more data and we can help and come up with solutions to best help our community in that way. Um, yeah, and I want to say thank you, Norma, for coming. And I'm glad that you finally were able to figure out the tech. And thank you, Catherine, for getting Norma here. And yeah, and we're going to think I'm going to introduce you now if Bev's presentation's all done. So Norma, definitely, we can. So I'll just introduce Norma. So Norma is one of the grandmothers that helped me with Nestle, and so is Bev. So and Mary. Hopefully she comes on here, but all of the women
I
who
am
are
on.
on. Okay, great. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Um,
I
um,
caught the tail end of Bev's presentation.
Great. I'm so glad that you made it. I wasn't sure.
Yes.
I can't really tell who's on. But
Yeah.
Norma Jacobs is also on our Global Water Futures Grandmother Committee, like Bev.
Get Norma to unmute herself.
Oh, Norma, are you able to unmute yourself? Or mute yourself? Unmute. Oh, okay. Right. And she has done a lot of work with Nestle along with Mary Sandy. Um, do you want to speak to, did you get the tail end of, or did you get to hear a little bit of Bev's presentation? And did you have anything to speak to that? Any words to speak to that?
I didn't hear Bev's presentation,
Okay.
so I don't know really what to
Yeah.
add to that or to to work off. I didn't hear anything.
Okay. Yeah, her presentation was about women's law and how it's in our responsibilities from our creation story to our how we're protectors of or how water is. We have a relationship with water because water protects our babies when they're in our belly, and that they are also it's also our first environment as humans. And when we're in our mother's womb, that's our first environment. We're literally living in water for 9 whole months. And so we grow up with that responsibility, and I think um, we also have that reciprocal relationship with water since it protects our future generations. And I think that um, we need to protect um, the water. And then she also linked how that is um, that's our water teachings. And my mom's just texting me right now, but we have that it's linked to and how we value women. And then I think that I might just ask you a little bit about how you maybe how we can start off of how you got into advocacy work for Nestle.
Well, I think how I got involved is because I'm so concerned that the disrespect that companies have in regards to honoring the land and the water and the air,
Mhm.
and so through my work as a educator through or teaching, through our history and our culture, our traditions. That it's very upsetting to have all of those violations happen to us because nobody asks us about permission to do anything, and yet in our treaties, like it clearly states that you know there are boundaries that are to be respected, and that when we made those treaties, that people were only supposed to use the land plow deep, and that there was there's everything has a boundary: the woods, the water, the air. Like a lot of our people are concerned because of the travel to the moon, and they go deep into the sea, and they're upsetting the balance, and everything on our Mother Earth is there for us to be healthy. And I know that from the Thanksgiving address, and you know it everything is there for our health. It's a diet that we follow because we're following the cycles of nature, and those things are upsetting all of the balance. Like when we go and tap trees, like even the forests are being contaminated because they find that our maple syrup is not good. And so I'm just thinking about all of this through our ceremonies, to be able to see and to hear, and how all of our boundaries have been violated because nobody thinks about ceremony, nobody thinks about honoring the environment around us. And it's true that we're reminded every year in January, December, when the earth becomes covered with snow again, and that's the water. We get snow all winter,
Mhm.
and even that is being depleted. We don't have great big snow banks anymore on the
Yeah.
land because the land is getting too warm.
Yeah, I think that.
So they're all signs of our the crisis, the climate crisis that we're in. And it's because we don't pay respect to our ceremonies and to our environment and to abide by those laws that have been put in place. So
I,
that's why I became concerned, in with the water, because we don't have a lot of good water on the reserve. Our river is contaminated, and we're drawing water from that river. For our families here, we don't have a lot of running water on the reserve.
mhm.
Our wells are all run dry because of digging, ditching, all of these things that are done, and nobody knows, the impact that it's having on our mother. All the resources that were supposed to be beneficial to keep us in good health is all being poisoned.
Yeah, I think
So
that we. Well, I just wanted to give some clarification. What you're referring to, is because I don't think people know what we're talking about when we talk about ceremonies or Thanksgiving address. So, this Thanksgiving address is um, what we're supposed to say every single morning, and that is giving thanks from the ground up, from the grass to the dew on the grass, to the bugs, to the birds, to the trees, to the winds, to the sun, to the sky, everything that we can see outside. We're giving thanks for every single thing, and you can do it short, or it can go for days, giving how detailed you want to get, but giving thanks for every single thing that is outside, and that's basically the mindset that we're supposed to have every single day, that we're supposed to be thankful for these things. And also to the ceremonies that you're talking about, the ceremonies are basically giving thanks all year round. give thanks to raspberries, give thanks to strawberries, giving thanks to the trees and the sap, and giving thanks to big green corn. And basically all of our ceremonies is just giving thanks and putting through ceremonies for the leader of like it, for example, like raspberries or strawberries. And that's basically our mindset and our values as Haudenosaunee people, is to take care of those things and to think about them in our everyday life, which I think not in our Western society, that's not obviously not their value, and obviously not on their mind every single morning. And I think you can get the idea. But
I think it's about having that relationship,
mm-hmm.
and that's what we're all about, is having relationship, whether it be with the environment or with the people in our community, our families, our all of our community that we're supposed to have a relationship with. But we've been interfered with a lot of colonial thought and processes that have divided us. So, and even to acknowledge the Thanksgiving address, a lot of people don't know what that's about in our community
Mm-hmm.
because they've been disrupted by, the residential schools, all of those, all of those things, those processes of genocide.
Yeah, so the advocacy work is a very like understatement of the ground work, or the foundation of where our values are, and then um, how we just want clean drinking water, and we just want these simple, they should be simple things, we just want that for our community, that not have a struggle to have clean drinking water. And it's a basic human right that is really not supposed to, we're not really not supposed to have to um, do these things and fight for these basic human rights in our community. Did you sorry, there's a fly. Did you want to have did you want to explain, or how does UNDRIP help Indigenous peoples secure control over their water, is another question.
Um, I'm not I'm not familiar with
Maybe let's just
all of those big
um
organizations.
yeah, let's, how does Haudenosaunee law, um how do we practice that in today's, and apply it in reality in everyday life? And how did, like, for an example, how did we give Nestle the cease and desist letter that was coming from our traditional government and our
Sorry, I didn't get that. Um, how do we what?
how do we practice our traditional law in everyday scenarios? Like, for example, how we gave Nestle the cease and desist letter. And how did we like give them that letter, given that they're an aberfoyle, which is taking water from our traditional lands and our traditional our water.
Well, for me again, that's still the violations of you know um, the government, of not asking permission and not validating and understanding that this is our land
Mm-hmm.
and that we should be consulted because on the use of it, whatever that might be, because right now we have, every institution that is acknowledging, like, oh, we're on the traditional lands of this, these, whether they're Haudenosaunee or Ojibwe or from out east and out west, and they give that acknowledgement. But what is the responsibility? Because once you acknowledge something, that there's work to be done with that. There are things that need to be made right. And so, as a Haudenosaunee person, like I would like to, be consulted. Like we don't even get consulted from our own nation of people. What's going on in our community? Decisions are made without our input. So, we're all in the Haudenosaunee people. Like we have a council, we have clans, and we have nations. We have people who are in roles of responsibility, like grandmothers and chiefs. And we have a starting point of how we do things ourselves to sustain ourselves. And that, if we can't solve it in our own family, in our own relationship with one another, then, we go and we ask someone to come and talk with us those things, because we have laws that tell us how to what is the responsibility of relationship.
Mhm.
So, they're all there and active. Like, we have ethics, we have protocols, we have procedures to follow, and they're all within our ceremonies that tell us on a regular basis how we're supposed to be carrying ourselves, what's our responsibility to one another, so, and what's our responsibility to the land. This is what nurtures us. This is what feeds us and supports us in all ways. From the environment. So, they're just not objects. They're real. They're alive. And there's so many stories, that we can talk about, to bring those things back forward and make them come alive and to help our people, understand what our relationships are about and how we're to carry ourselves. How do we, it's just like, why do we go and pick raspberries? It's to acknowledge and to build that relationship. And they're not raspberries that we planted. They're wild ones, and we've got to go and look for them.
Mhm.
That gives them our respect. We're communicating to them. We're welcoming them. We're they're helping us to be healthy. So, it's really important about building that relationship. And it's just like a parent and a mother and a child. They we have practices for that when their babies are born, that the women spend time with their baby, because it's getting to know that child, getting to know what their interest is. So as a woman, as the mother, that we put those things before them that interest them, that ties them in back to their land. So there's many things, many stories and protocols that we're supposed to help one another in our, from the time that we're born and even before that, and during conception, that there are a lot of teachings on how we discipline ourselves, carry us through, so that we're an enhancement of that past. We're
Mhm.
an enhancement of all of our stories, starting from the time that, creation began. So we're here to carry those things forward so that our coming faces are going to know that. They're going to know what their responsibility is. They're going to know how to take care of their babies. They're going to know how to take care of themselves during their pregnancy. Like, so we can become good mothers, become a good family, and all of these other things are interrupting that, because, especially about the water, because of its, the contents that are in there now are not helping us. and especially for pregnant women.
Yeah.
So, there's so much in our culture that we haven't even, you know, only done maybe a drop in a bucket to the revitalization of those things. I go to
Yeah.
ceremony all the time, and and I hear things that I never heard that before.
Mhm.
It makes sense to me, and I just add it on into the bundle that I carry
Mhm.
to help teach other people about those things. Our life is our whole teaching is also full bodied, and how can a person go wrong? In their lifetime, if we followed those teachings from the very beginning and really understood and internalized what it means to be Haudenosaunee, to be a woman and to carry these responsibilities and how we create balance, how we create life. Like we see it every day, when we look outside and see our mother, the earth, how, she's giving us trees, all different kinds of trees. There's all kinds of fruit and varieties of nuts that we can pick because they all contribute to our health. But all of those things are being, they're not good for us anymore um, because of because of everything that's being put in the water. It's affecting everything. It's not just, it's not isolated.
Yeah, we have you and Mary were um you and Mary were the two um strong women who held your responsibilities, um and I don't know if Mary, did you have anything to add to what Norma is saying?
Yeah, a little bit. Um, I wanted to become involved when um, Don wanted someone to go to some of the meetings with Global Water Futures, and I'm a curious person, so I thought, well, I'll go and see what I can learn, if I can learn anything else. And I, the scientists spoke a lot about hydrology, and I had no idea what that was. And I learned a lot. Um, it's um, basically a study of water on this earth and in the earth. It's both groundwater and the water underground as well,
Mhm.
and how it contributes to um, the water that we have. And when um, I heard that Nestle was taking so much of it, and most of us um, didn't know anything about it because nobody consulted us, nobody asked us, nobody had a meeting with us, and it seemed to be it was all the government authorizing them taking this water, and they basically paid almost nothing for it.
Yeah.
But still, if they kept it up, at some point in time, we're going to find that we don't have water to sustain anybody around here anymore. So I enjoyed talking to the scientists and all of the studies that they're doing on this Six Nations reservation, and they're checking things. They're checking our water, and I think that um, it was a long time coming actually for them to start testing water here to see whether we had any good water. Um, and then the plan to clean up some of the creeks and try and get them back to a healthy state. Um, all of that plays in with what Norma was talking about. We have to uh, try our best to um, clean up the water so that the water is usable again.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I
and the
know.
and the farm. the farmers don't help any with all of the chemicals that they put into the fields, and all of these chemicals run off into the groundwater.
Yeah, the groundwater is definitely, there's so many issues with all of the water bodies in Six Nations, like my Boston Creek, Mackenzie Creek, the Grand River. We went through, the scientists have conducted a few studies. I read a few studies and they presented on the show in the previous weeks of the findings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they and Charles, he was talking about how we have 37, I think, sewage pipes that run into the Grand River, and that we're at the bottom of the map, and that he like recognizes that it's no coincidence that we are at the bottom of the river, and that our neighbors do not care what they're sending in, what they're putting into the water, and they don't care if we're at the end and that we're getting all of it. And I think that brings back to that it's also really stagnant, our river, because of the dams. And I think that's another issue that we have regarding our water here in Six Nations. And I was at a talk already that there's a different way to take down the dams, because the dams are from our own money here from Six Nations, and that it's dangerous to take it down all at once and like blow up the dam that everybody wants to do. Because it would release all of the sediment from the years and years of the pollution, and it would run down and it would destroy a lot of life in the river and all the animals that drink it, and it would be really really ill river then. And he talked about how it was only about a few years ago that the river was the number one, or it was right alongside the river in Cleveland that got set on fire, and because of the pollution. So our river was that dirty in all of Canada, in all of Ontario. And you can just think of how many rivers are in Canada, and that our Grand River here was one of the worst, up beside the one that caught fire. So I think that really puts in perspective of how what our condition and what our state here is in Six Nations, and that we need to take these water issues seriously, because I know that even for myself and all of the youth that I talk to, they really would love to see a day that the water like isn't polluted, that it would be clear again, that we would be able to see the bottom again, and that it's just as clear as it is at the mouth of the river than it is here. And that's what I even witnessed when I was on the 2-row paddle, when I didn't even know it was the Grand River, because it was so pristine and so clean, and I couldn't believe my eyes that the river was, that was the Grand River, because it was so clean and I could see the bottom of the river. And I never knew, and I was like, and that's what really got like me also passionate about cleaning up our Grand River. And that's why I also had the awareness day, the climate awareness day, I had all the youth talking and gave them a panel to talk at, and that was all at Chesapeake Park alongside the river, and just to like let the community know that like it is possible if we all work together to clean our rivers, and if we all work together and we recognize that, and we remember our traditional Haudenosaunee values as women, as a community, and we take care of our water systems, and that's like
Yeah.
including the Grand River. And um, yeah, that's definitely
Well, aren't we 95% water or something like that?
yeah, we're yeah,
So
we're
we need
95.
water. We
Yeah.
need clean water.
Yeah, our brains are like 95% water. And then the rest of
Yeah.
our body is like 70% water. So we literally cannot live. Oh, sorry, there's only 23. Um, there's 23 um, river system. No, not river systems. There's 23 sewage systems that are going into the Grand River, not 37.
Oh.
However, it's still a huge number.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and he was also talking about how when it rains, these sewage systems overflow, and so it's just pure sewage and not treated
Oh.
sewage or whatever that's going right into the river. So yeah, he already went over all of those facts, and um, I'm so thankful that we have leadership that's coming onto the show, and that was supportive of me when giving Nestle the cease and desist letter, and I'm super thankful for that. And I think that we need more of Normas, and we need more of Marys to come together and take that leadership role in pursuing these actions against these corporations that are taking and stealing and exploiting our lands and waters. Um, and I'm just super grateful that youth like me know that, and since we did that they know that it's possible that our leadership and our traditional leaderships can be behind and make a difference, and makes Nestle, um, because Nestle is now gone from Canada, but they still have. Or do you guys have any? Um, what do you want from Nestle now, and um, what are your thoughts on and your position on Nestle right now, since um, since they have left Canada, but they still have to pay, and they have restitution, um, and they still stole all that water. So what are your thoughts and your position, not just on Nestle but on other water bottle companies?
Um. I don't know. I don't know how we can get back. Um. Maybe they should pay to clean up the river.
Mhm.
That might be an idea. I don't know how we could go about doing that, but um, they took that much um, of our aquifer, and we we need clean water. And if
Mhm.
there's a way to clean it up, then they should be a part of who pays for cleaning it up.
Mhm. I think I'll ask.
But I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, I'll ask you and Norma and Bev that question. And I think it's also good that we're all talking about it right here, because we're all always busy. And we definitely need another like meeting about that and see what do we do next.
Yeah.
So Norma, do you have any response to
Um,
that?
well, I think that they need to, like Mary said, they need to have some restitution to all the water that they did take and without our permission, and they need to, respond in a good way to the Confederacy, to know, know whether an apology, but they need to apologize somehow and to do some work in regards to that. And I think that why they left Canada was because they realized that they used up all the water almost. So I don't think there's much left there. Or if there's another company that's moving in there. But our people need to be acknowledged and they need to be consulted, about what is the best thing. It's not just about what I want. It's about our whole community, our whole nation of people that live on this land. We've gone too long and letting a lot of things slide because we're a peaceful people and that we're here to help and assist in any way that we can to make lives better, but not when we're being taken advantage of. And it comes down to that we're being taken advantage of just because of our kindness, and just as well as not being consulted. And a lot of people, are angry about that because we don't have any consultation. We don't know what's going on in our own land. And I think that, that I leave that up to Bev, that she's in a position to, to make some suggestions and to work with Confederacy in order to get that, communication going with Nestle's and see what is it that that would be right, to help our community, you know, um, come back to its health before, the onset of all of these, constructs of government, how they, just come in and take, whatever it is that they want, whenever they feel like, without consultation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's, a lot of things that be in cleaning up the river, like Mary said, help in that way. But there are a lot of things that are related to the acts of moving into our territories, a lot of this water and many other products besides that. Like they made millions of dollars, through their company,
Yeah,
and we need to be,
yeah, they've taken
compensated for that.
millions of dollars, and they made millions of dollars. And
Yeah.
in our previous, just last week, Rod had went over the facts about how much they have made, and 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 if anybody wants any facts about that, just rewatch last week's, and there's lots there. Bev, do you have any thoughts?
Hi, yeah. Hi, Norma. Um, I yeah, I'm willing to do, anything for the Confederacy, and always have always told them that, I'm ready and willing to do whatever it takes to for whatever we need to do. I think, like right now, I know the difficulty is with the pandemic and COVID and them even trying to meet and making decisions, which is really difficult right now. But I think Norma and Mary's um, ideas and their recommendations that, restitution is the legal word, um, of, uh, of repairing the harm that they've done. So in order to repair the harm that they've done, and they're a trillion-dollar company that I'm sure would have the resources to be able to address all of those issues that our community would identify, and not only with the river, but also the groundwater and people's homes that people who don't even have running water at Six Nations, um, being able to pay for all of that, and all of the needs of the community um, in order to address all of the just basic living, and having running water is important. Um, but also uh, the further advocacy, I think, is even boycotting Nestle, because they have, they create products,
Yeah.
um, other products that are, millions and millions of people use. So it's not just the water, but it's all of those products that they've that they develop and they create. So if we stop using their products, it would stop their production. It would end their business. But I still see even a lot of people still buying their water, um, because their business hasn't stopped. So we need to stop buying their water. We need to stop buying their products. Um, and I've seen a list of them. There's a long list. I don't know if you've ever put that out there, Makasha, of the products that they they create. Um, but anyway, that's what I think could be the next step as well. Putting that out there. I know that it's been out there at one time, um, about the amount that they do. So um, I think that we can keep working on that, right, Norma?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Never stop working.
I think we have. Do you have any final thoughts on the colonial, I guess, Western um, society, on how they violate water and women?
Say that again.
How they, how the Western society violates, I know that violates water and women, because we're talking about murdered and missing Indigenous women, and do you just have, and how it links to our current state of our environment, and do you have any um, final thoughts on that? It's from our viewer, that question.
That's a huge question. But I just finished a presentation a little earlier about uh, responsibilities of all of us as human beings, and it's all of our responsibility as human beings. It doesn't matter what race we are. We still have to rely on water. We still have to rely on all other um, all other creation. Um, so it's not just us as Haudenosaunee people or Ongahoe people that have those responsibilities. It's all human beings, and that also our relationship to um, settlers and colonizers and allies. Um, that we're also all treaty people. We're all partners. And so if we're all treaty people, then it isn't just our responsibility to do that. It's everybody's responsibility. So that's what I have always advocated for. And I know that we have a lot of allies, non-Indigenous allies, and continuing to that continue to support all of our advocacy, but they're advocates as well. Um, so being able to bring all those people together, and um, I think we can make the shifts and those changes that need to happen right now.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Bev, Mary, and Norma. Um, I think that we're going to have to continue this discussion next week, possibly. And yeah, we are definitely we're definitely lucky to have all of you on of our show and to have all of your time. We're very lucky as a show, and our viewers are lucky to listen to you and listen to your presentations. I think we're going to have to move on to just our final presentations. Our final what are we doing now?
We're gonna play a song, our outro song.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you everybody. We're out of our time and we don't want to keep anybody too long. We're already an hour and a half, so thank you viewers for watching our season 2 episode 2. And thank you to all of our viewers, and thank you to Hannah, who is our tech person, and she's the one who's switching between all the screens and our presentations, and she's been in our house and here working and since 1 o'clock today, 2 o'clock, and so is Alex, and we have a huge production. We're working all day to make sure that all of this runs fairly smoothly for all of our viewers. We have this cool logo in the back, and a lot of work goes into filming this. And here's our make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to all of our channels on Facebook, and we're on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So thank you so much. Ona.
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 It was great. Thank you.
Every day and every night I pray. I pray for you. I love and I miss you, sister. Come home. Please, God, bring her home.